Captain Hyunwoo Kim stared at the empty screen in front of him. The communication panel on his ship showed nothing but static. He had been trying to contact the mining colony on Kepler 442b for 3 hours now, but there was only silence. "Yuna, try the emergency frequency again," he told his communications officer. Yuna Park shook her head. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls, but the result was the same. "Nothing, Captain. It's like the entire system just went quiet." Hyunwoo felt a cold fear in his chest. The Kepler system had over 2 million people living on 3 different worlds. Mining stations, research facilities, and farming colonies. They could not all just disappear. "Set course for the nearest colony," he ordered. "We need to see what happened." The ship New Sol moved through space toward the Kepler system. It was a small exploration vessel with only 30 crew members. They were supposed to be mapping new star systems, not investigating missing colonies. When they reached the first world, Hyunwoo could not believe what he saw. The cities were still there. The buildings stood perfectly fine, but there were no lights in the windows, no ships moving in the sky, no radio signals coming from anywhere on the planet. "Send down a probe," Hyunwoo said quietly. The probe showed empty streets, cars stopped in the middle of roads, doors left open, food still on tables, but no people, not even bodies. Everyone was simply gone. "Captain," Yuna said, her voice shaking. "I'm getting reports from other ships. The Centauri system has gone quiet too, and the Wolf system, and Vega." Hyunwoo looked at the star map on his screen. Red dots marked the silent systems. There were too many of them, and they were spreading toward Earth like a disease. 3 days later, they received a message from Earth. Admiral Hyojin Park appeared on their screen. She looked tired and scared. "All ships are ordered to return to Earth immediately," she said. "We have lost contact with 47 star systems in the past week. Whatever is happening, it's getting closer to home." On Earth, Jin-Ho Lee worked in the deep archives under the capital city. He was the planet's chief expert on alien biology, and right now he was looking through very old files that most people had forgotten about. The last transmission from the Andromedan colony ship had mentioned something called devourers. Jin-Ho had heard that word before, somewhere in the ancient records. He found what he was looking for in a file that was over 3,000 years old. It was written in an old alien language that few people could read anymore. But Jin-Ho could read it. The file told a story that made his blood run cold. Long ago, before humans had ever left Earth, there was a race that traveled between the stars. They called themselves the First Ones. They had built a great civilization that spanned thousands of worlds. But something had come for them. Something that ate entire planets. Something that consumed not just the people but their thoughts, their memories, their very souls. The First Ones called these creatures the Devourers. The First Ones had fought back. They had built great weapons and powerful ships. But in the end, they had all been consumed. The last entry in the file was simple. "The Devourers have taken everything. They move toward the galaxy's edge. May the younger races never face what we have faced." Jin-Ho ran to the emergency meeting that President So Min-choi had called. All the world's leaders were there, along with military commanders and scientists. "The situation is getting worse," Admiral Hyojin Park reported. "We now have confirmation that over 100 star systems have gone silent. The pattern is clear. Something is moving through our part of the galaxy, and it's headed straight for Earth." "What about our allies?" asked General Tae Hyun-shin. "The Galactic Confederation has thousands of ships. Surely they can help us." Admiral Park shook her head. "The Confederation homeworlds went silent yesterday. All of them. In the same hour." The room fell quiet. The Galactic Confederation had been humanity's partner for 300 years. They were older than humans, wiser, more advanced. If they were gone, what hope did Earth have? "There is something else," Jin-Ho said. He told them about the ancient files and the Devourers. "This has happened before, and last time an entire galactic civilization was wiped out." President So Min-choi looked around the room at the faces of Earth's leaders. "How long do we have?" "Based on the current rate of expansion," Admiral Park said, The Devourers will reach Earth in 6 days. What are our options? The president asked. General Shin stood up. We have 200 ships in our defense fleet. They're good ships with trained crews. But if this enemy destroyed the entire Confederation, he did not need to finish. Everyone knew what he meant. Earth's fleet was tiny compared to what the aliens had possessed. Dr. Minji Song, Earth's top physicist, raised her hand. There is one possibility, she said quietly. Project Ragnarok. The room became very quiet. Everyone had heard of Project Ragnarok, but few knew the details. It had been designed during Earth's last Great War, but it was so terrible that they had never built it. Explain, President Choi said. Dr. Song took a deep breath. Ragnarok was designed to be the ultimate weapon, a ship that could destroy entire planets and use their energy to power itself. Each world it destroyed would make it stronger. You're talking about a planet killer, General Shin said. Yes, but not just any planet killer. One that grows more powerful with each world it destroys. It would be nearly unstoppable. Wu Jin Nam, the head of Earth's Ethics Council, stood up. We cannot build such a thing. It would make us no better than these devourers. We would become the very evil we're trying to fight. The alternative is extinction, Dr. Song replied. Not just for humans, but for all life in this galaxy. Sometimes there are no good choices. President Choi looked around the room. How long would it take to build this weapon? 72 hours, Dr. Song said. Maybe less if we use every resource on the planet. The president was quiet for a long moment. Outside the window, she could see the city where 4 billion humans lived their lives. In 6 days, they might all be gone. We will put it to a vote, she said finally. All in favor of building the Ragnarok weapon? One by one, hands went up around the room. Even Wu Jin Nam raised his hand, though tears ran down his face as he did it. The vote was unanimous. Earth would build its planet killer. In space above, Earth Captain Hyunwoo Kim watched the construction begin. Ships arrived from every nation, carrying metals and machines and workers. The shipyards worked day and night, building something that had never been built before. The ship took shape quickly. It was huge, over 1 kilometer long, with weapons that could crack a world in half. They called it Terra's Wrath. As Hyunwoo watched, he wondered if they were building humanity's salvation or its damnation. The construction of Terra's Wrath happened faster than anyone thought possible. Every nation on Earth sent their best workers and materials. The asteroid mines worked without stopping. Factories that had been making cars and computers now made weapons and armor plating. Dr. Minji Song stood in the main construction bay, watching robots and humans work together to build the most dangerous weapon ever created. The ship was beautiful in a terrible way. Its hull was dark metal that seemed to drink in light. The weapons mounted along its sides could punch holes through planets. The quantum core is ready, her assistant told her. The planet-cracking systems are online. The energy absorption arrays are functioning. Minji nodded, but she felt sick inside. They were building something that could destroy worlds. Once Terra's Wrath fired its weapons, there would be no way to bring back what it destroyed. In the military command center, Admiral Hyojin Park studied the reports coming in from scout ships. The news was getting worse every hour. The Rigel system just went silent, her aide reported. That's 137 systems now. The Devourers are moving faster than we predicted. Admiral Park looked at the map. The red dots showing silent systems were getting closer to Earth. At their current speed, the enemy would arrive in 4 days, not 6. Send word to the construction teams. They need to work faster. President So Min Choi walked through the streets of Seoul, looking at the faces of the people. They knew something was wrong, but most did not know how bad it really was. Children played in parks. People went to work. Life continued, as if the end of the world was not coming in 4 days. She had decided not to tell everyone the truth. What good would it do? If they failed, the people would die whether they knew it was coming or not. If they succeeded, there would be time to explain later. But the weight of the secret was crushing her. 4 billion people trusted her to keep them safe, and she was gambling everything on a weapon that might turn them into monsters. At the main spaceport, Captain Dalsu Kang stood in front of 500 volunteers. These men and women had answered the call to crew Terra's Wrath. They all knew it was probably a one-way mission. Dalsu was 50 years old and had fought in 3 different wars. He had seen what weapons could do to people and planets. But he had never seen anything like what they were being asked to do now. "You all know why we're here," he told them. "In 3 days, we launched Terra's Wrath against an enemy that has destroyed over 100 star systems. Our mission is simple. Stop them before they reach Earth." He paused and looked at their faces. These were good people. Scientists, soldiers, engineers. They had families and dreams and futures, and they were willing to give it all up to save their world. "I won't lie to you," Dalsu continued. "The weapon we're taking is terrible. It destroys planets to power itself. Every world we crack to stop the Devourers will weigh on our souls forever. Some of you might decide this is too much to ask." No one moved. No one left. "Then we do this. Together," Dalsu said. Yoonji Han was the chief engineer assigned to Terra's Wrath. She had spent the last 2 days learning how the ship's systems worked. The technology was beyond anything humans had built before. It used quantum mechanics to literally tear apart the bonds that held planets together. "The scary part," she told her team, "is how easy it is. Point the ship at a planet, charge the quantum arrays, and fire. The planet splits apart like an egg, and we absorb the energy from its core." Her assistant, a young man named Junho, raised his hand. "What happens to the people on the planet?" Yoonji was quiet for a moment. "They die instantly. The whole world just stops existing." The team worked in silence after that. They all understood what they were building, but none of them wanted to talk about it. On the observation deck, navigator Nari Kwan watched Earth turn slowly below them. It was beautiful, blue and green and white, with lights twinkling on the dark side where cities slept. She had grown up on Earth, in a small town by the ocean. Her parents still lived there. Her younger brother was starting college. Her grandmother made the best soup in the world and always asked when Nari was going to get married and have children. Nari might never see any of them again. In 2 days, she would guide Terra's Wrath away from Earth and toward an enemy that had consumed entire civilizations. The odds of coming home were very small, but if they failed, there would be no home to come back to. Weapons Officer Sang-Hoon Yu ran final tests on the PlanetKiller systems. He had been a soldier for 20 years, but he had never fired a weapon at anything bigger than a ship. Now he was going to fire at worlds. The targeting computer showed him how it would work. Lock onto a planet from a safe distance. Charge the quantum disruptors. Fire a beam of pure energy that would tear apart the planet's core. Watch the world die in seconds. "The systems are perfect," he reported to Captain Dalsu. "We can crack a planet from 50,000 kilometers away. The energy feedback will power our shields and weapons for the next target." Dalsu nodded. "How many shots can we fire before we need to find fuel?" "Each planet we destroy gives us enough power for 3 more shots. As long as we keep destroying worlds, we can keep fighting." The captain looked out at the stars. "Let's hope we don't have to destroy too many." Dr. Jinho Lee worked in his laboratory, trying to understand more about the Devourers. The ancient files had given him some clues, but not enough. He needed to know what they were really facing. Late at night, he found another reference in a very old text. It mentioned something called the Great Silence that had happened millions of years ago. An entire section of the galaxy had just stopped making any noise. No radio signals. No light from their cities. Nothing. The text suggested that the Devourers were not just destroying civilizations. They were doing something else, something worse. Jin Ho tried to contact Captain Hyun-woo, who was still in his ship near the edge of the solar system, watching for the enemy. But the communication channels were full of military traffic. Everyone was preparing for the launch of Terra's Wrath. President Choi stood on the bridge of Terra's Wrath as the final preparations were made. The ship was ready. The crew was aboard. In 6 hours they would launch. "Madam President," Captain Dalsu said, "we're ready to depart. Final checks are complete." She nodded and shook his hand. "Captain, I want you to know that you're carrying the hopes of every person on Earth. But more than that, you're carrying our conscience. Don't let us become the thing we're fighting against." Dalsu looked into her eyes. "I understand, Madam. President, we'll stop the Devourers, but we'll stay human while we do it." As the President's shuttle left Terra's Wrath, she looked back at the massive ship. It was dark and powerful and terrible. In its weapons bays were devices that could crack worlds like nuts. In its crew quarters were 500 people who might never come home. She whispered a prayer for them as her shuttle descended toward Earth. In 6 hours, Terra's Wrath would launch. In 4 days, they would know if humanity would survive or join the great silence that was spreading across the galaxy. On Terra's Wrath, Captain Dalsu walked through the ship one last time. His crew was at their stations. The weapons were charged. The navigation system showed a course toward the nearest Devourer fleet. He thought about his wife and daughter, safe in their home in Busan. He had not told them where he was going or what he was doing. They thought he was on a routine military mission. Maybe it was better that way. "All stations prepare for launch," he announced over the ship's communication system. "This is Terra's Wrath. We are humanity's answer to the darkness. We will not fail." The massive engines ignited and Terra's Wrath began its journey into the void. Terra's Wrath flew through space for 3 days before they found the enemy. Captain Dalsu stood on the bridge, looking at the sensor readings that made no sense. The Devourer ships were huge, bigger than anything humans had ever built. But they were not made of metal and circuits like normal ships. "Captain," Narration said from her navigation station, "I'm reading organic material mixed with machine parts. These ships are alive." The Devourer fleet was feeding on the star of the Tau Ceti system. Massive tentacles reached out from the ships and touched the sun's surface, drinking its energy. As Dalsu watched, the star grew smaller and dimmer. "How many ships?" he asked. 57 large vessels," reported Sang-Hoon Yu from Weapons. "Each one is about 3 kilometers long. There are also hundreds of smaller ships surrounding them." Dalsu felt his stomach drop. Terra's Wrath was powerful, but it was only one ship. How could they fight so many enemies? Then something even worse happened. The Devourer ship started sending a message, not through radio or laser communications, but directly into the minds of everyone on Terra's Wrath. The voice was cold and empty, like the sound of dying stars. "Small ones," it said inside their heads. "You carry death weapons. We smell the PlanetKiller's energy. Why do you fight? Why do you not join the Great Silence?" Captain Dalsu tried to answer, but the voice continued without waiting. "We are the Devourers. We have consumed 1,000 galaxies. We have eaten the dreams of 1,000,000 species. Your weapons cannot stop us. Your courage cannot save you. Submit. Feed us your worlds. Join the quiet peace of ending." All around the bridge, crew members grabbed their heads in pain. The voice was like acid in their minds. But Dalsu forced himself to stand straight. "This is Captain Dalsu Kang of the Earthship Terra's Wrath. We reject your offer. Humanity will never surrender." The Devourer's response was immediate. 20 of their largest ships turned toward Terra's Wrath and began to move. As they got closer, Dalsu could see what they really were. The ships had been built from the bones and cities of dead worlds. Skyscrapers and space stations were welded together with organic tissue. The hulls were covered in what looked like eyes and mouths, and from each ship came a low humming sound that made everyone on Terra's Wrath feel sick. "Captain," Yoon Ji-han called from engineering, "I'm detecting massive energy signatures from those ships. They're powering up weapons." "Fire." "Everything we have," Dalsu ordered. Terra's Wrath unleashed its conventional weapons first. Laser cannons and missile launchers filled space with energy and explosions. But when the light faded, the Devourer ships were barely damaged. Their organic hulls healed almost instantly. Conventional weapons are useless, Sang-hoon reported. We need to use the PlanetKiller. Dalsu looked at the tactical display. The nearest target was the world of New Sapporo, a human colony world that had gone silent 3 days ago. 12 million people had lived there. Now it was empty. Its cities dark, but the planet itself was still intact. Captain, Nari said, quietly, if we crack New Sapporo, the energy release will damage the Devourer fleet, but she did not need to finish. Everyone knew what "but" meant. They would be destroying a human world. Even if the people were already gone, it felt like murdering their own species. Are there any other options? Dalsu asked. Yoon-ji checked her readings. The Devourers are too spread out. A normal PlanetKiller shot wouldn't hit enough of them, but if we crack New Sapporo, the energy wave will reach their entire fleet. The Devourer ships were getting closer. Their weapons began to glow with the same cold light as dying stars. Dalsu closed his eyes and thought about Earth. About 4 billion people who were counting on him to stop this enemy. About his wife and daughter, asleep in their beds, trusting him to keep them safe. Target New Sapporo, he said quietly. Sang-hoon's hand shook as he programmed the PlanetKiller weapons. Targeting system locked. Quantum disruptors charging. Ready to fire on your command, Captain. Dalsu looked at the beautiful blue world on his screen. 3 days ago, children had been playing on its beaches. People had been falling in love and getting married and starting families. Now it was just a target. Fire, he whispered. The quantum beam lanced out from Terra's wrath and struck New Sapporo at its core. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the planet began to crack, like an egg. Massive pieces of the world flew apart, and the core exploded in a ball of pure energy. The energy wave hit the Devourer fleet like a giant fist. 5 of their ships were destroyed completely. 10 more were badly damaged. The rest were pushed back, their organic hulls burning. But inside Terra's wrath, something else was happening. The ship absorbed the energy from New Sapporo's death, and that energy changed it. The walls began to pulse like a heartbeat. The lights grew brighter, but stranger, and the crew could feel something new in their minds. Engineering to bridge, Yoon-ji called, her voice scared. Captain, the ship is changing. The energy from the planet is being absorbed into every system. We're getting more powerful, but something else is happening too. Dalsu could feel it. The ship was becoming more than just a machine. It was becoming something alive and hungry. Can you control it? He asked. For now. But Captain, I'm reading. Quantum echoes from the destroyed planet. It's like the ship is absorbing memories along with energy. The memories of everyone who lived on New Sapporo. Around the bridge, crew members began to look sick. Some of them were crying without knowing why. Others stared at nothing with empty eyes. Nari grabbed Dalsu's arm. Captain, I can hear them. The people from New Sapporo. They're asking why we killed them. They're asking why their children had to die. Dalsu felt the voices too. 12 million people asking the same question over and over. Why did you murder us? Why did you take our world? But there was no time to think about it. The surviving Devourer ships were regrouping, and more ships were coming from deeper in the system. The battle was far from over. All ships, this is Terra's wrath, Dalsu, broadcast to the human scout vessels that had been watching from a distance. Fall back to Earth immediately. Tell them we've engaged the enemy. Tell them the weapon works, but... He stopped. How could he explain what was happening to his ship? And crew? Tell them the weapon works, he said finally. We'll keep fighting. The Devourer fleet began to move again, but now they were more careful. They had learned that Terra's wrath was dangerous. Instead of attacking directly, they began to spread out across the galaxy. Then came another message in the crew's minds. Clever little planet killers. You have learned to feed as we do. But for every world you crack, we will consume 10 living worlds. Your weapon makes you strong, but it also makes you guilty. How many of your own kind will you murder to stop us? Dalsu realized with horror what the enemy was doing. They were forcing him to choose between becoming a monster or watching the galaxy die. Set course for the nearest Devourer group. He ordered. We have to stop them before they reach more populated systems. As Terra's wrath turned toward its next target, Captain Dalsu looked at his hands. They looked the same as always, but he could feel the change beginning. The ship's hunger was becoming his hunger. The need to crack worlds and drink their energy was growing in his mind. He tried to push the feeling away, but it was getting stronger with every hour. Behind them, the wreckage of New Sapporo spread through space like a memorial to 12 million dead. Ahead of them, the Devourers waited, knowing that every victory would cost Terra's wrath a piece of its humanity. The real battle had only just begun. 3 weeks had passed since Terra's wrath destroyed New Sapporo. In that time, Captain Dalsu and his crew had cracked 6 more worlds to stay ahead of the Devourer fleet. Each planet they destroyed made their ship stronger, but it also made them less human. The ship had grown. What started as a kilometer-long vessel was now almost twice that size. New sections had formed from the absorbed energy, creating rooms and passages that seemed to breathe. The walls pulsed with veins of light that looked disturbingly alive. Chief Engineer Yoonji Han stood in what used to be the main engine room, but now looked more like the inside of a living creature. The quantum cores that powered the ship had changed into something that resembled giant hearts, pumping energy instead of blood through organic tubes. "Captain," she said into her communicator, "I need you to see this. The ship isn't just using the energy from destroyed planets anymore. It's incorporating their matter, their information, everything." Dalsu arrived a few minutes later, but Hyunji barely recognized him. His eyes had changed color, becoming the same cold blue as the ship's energy systems. When he spoke, his voice had an echo that sounded like distant screams. "What's the problem, Yoonji?" he asked. "The problem is that we're not human anymore," she said. "Look at yourself, Captain. Look at what we've become." Dalsu looked at his reflection in a metal panel. His skin was paler than it had been, and strange marks covered his arms like circuit patterns. But worse than his appearance was what he felt inside. The hunger for more worlds to crack, the need to feed the ship's growing appetite. "We're winning," he said. "We've destroyed 17 Devourer ships. We've saved dozens of systems from being consumed." "At what cost?" Yoonji asked. "We've destroyed 7 worlds. Billions of people died because of us, even if they were already dead when we found them. And now we're changing into something else." Dalsu felt anger rise in his chest, but it was not his anger. It was the ship's anger. Terra's wrath did not like being questioned. "We do what we must," he said in that echoing voice. "The mission continues." Navigator Nari Kwan was having her own problems. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the faces of people from the destroyed worlds. Children playing in parks that no longer existed, families eating dinner in homes that were now space dust. The voices were getting louder too, not just from New Sapporo anymore, but from all 7 worlds they had cracked. Millions of people asking why they had to die, begging for their lives, crying for their lost children. "I can't take it anymore," she told Weapons Officer Sang-hoon Yu. "The guilt is eating me alive." Sang-hoon nodded. He understood. Every time he fired the PlanetKiller weapons, he felt the deaths of everyone on the target world. But he also felt something else: satisfaction. The ship's hunger made destroying worlds feel good, and that scared him more than anything. "We need to talk to the others," Nari said. "Some of the crew are starting to enjoy this. They're becoming addicted to the power." It was true. About half the crew had embraced the changes that the ship was making to them. They smiled when they destroyed worlds. They laughed at the voices of the dead. They were becoming something new, something that fed on destruction. The other half of the crew, led by Nari and Yoonji, were fighting to stay human. But it was getting harder every day. On Earth, Dr. Minji Song studied the reports coming back from Terra's wrath. The news was both good and terrifying. The ship was successfully fighting the Devourers, but it was also becoming something dangerous. "The energy signatures are completely different now," she told President So-min Choi. "Terra's wrath is no longer just a ship with weapons. It's become a living entity that feeds on planetary destruction." President Choi looked older than her years. The stress of the past month had aged her rapidly. "Can we still control it?" Don't think so, Dr. Song admitted. The last communication we received from Captain Dalsu was strange. He spoke about feeding the hunger and becoming one with the weapon. I think we may have created something that we can't stop. The president stared out the window at the people of Earth going about their daily lives. They did not know that their saviors might have become their greatest threat. Meanwhile, Terra's wrath was chasing the main Devourer fleet toward the center of the galaxy. The enemy ships had changed their strategy. Instead of fighting directly, they were splitting up and attacking multiple star systems at once. For every world that Terra's wrath saved by destroying a nearby planet, the Devourers consumed 3 more worlds in distant systems. It was a race that humanity could not win. Captain Dalsu stood on the bridge, which now looked more like a cathedral made of bone and metal. The control panels had grown into the walls like tumors. The crew stations were connected to the operators by organic cables that fed directly into their nervous systems. "Captain," Nari said, her voice filled with pain, "I'm receiving a transmission from the Devourer fleet. They want to talk." The message came through the same way as before, directly into their minds. But this time the voice was different. It sounded almost sad. "PlanetKillers," the voice said, "you have learned our ways well. 7 worlds have fed your hunger. Soon you will understand the truth that we learned long ago." "What truth?" Dalsu asked, though part of him already knew. "That there is no end to the hunger. Each world you destroy makes you need more. Each victory makes you less like what you were. We were once like you, young PlanetKiller. We had families and dreams and hopes. But the hunger grew stronger than our love." Images flashed through Dalsu's mind. A civilization much like humanity faced with a terrible enemy. They had built planet-killing ships to fight back. But as their ships grew stronger, the crews grew hungrier. Eventually, they had destroyed their own worlds to feed the weapons that were supposed to protect them. "You are us," the voice continued. "In 1,000 years or 10,000, you will consume your home galaxy. Then you will move to the next galaxy and the next. The hunger never stops. The silence spreads forever." Dalsu tried to reject the vision, but deep in his heart he knew it was true. He could feel the hunger growing stronger every day. Soon, even Earth would look like food to him. "There is still time," Nari said, grabbing his arm. "We can still choose to be human. We can find another way to fight them." But Dalsu looked at her with those cold blue eyes and smiled. "Why would we want to be human? Humans are weak. They die easily. We are becoming something better. Something eternal." Nari realized with horror that she was losing him. The captain she had served with for 5 years was disappearing, replaced by something that thought destroying worlds was natural. "This is not victory," she said. "This is exactly what they want. They're not trying to kill us anymore. They're trying to make us become like them." The Devourer voice spoke again. "Welcome to the great silence, young ones. Soon you will understand the peace that comes from consuming everything you once loved." On Earth, the final message from Terra's wrath arrived. It was from Nari, transmitted in secret while the rest of the crew was not watching. "This is Navigator Nari Kwan," she said, her face pale and frightened. "I'm sending this message to warn Earth. Terra's wrath is no longer under human control. The ship and most of the crew have been changed by the energy from the destroyed worlds. Captain Dalsu is talking about returning to Earth to feed the ship's growing appetite." She looked around nervously, then continued. "We created this weapon to save humanity, but it's becoming the thing we were trying to fight. If Terra's wrath returns to Earth, it won't come as a savior. It will come as a devourer." The message ended, leaving Earth with a terrible choice. Their greatest weapon had become their greatest threat, and it was heading home. The final battle began when Terra's wrath appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system. The ship that had left 3 months ago was gone, replaced by something that looked like a living nightmare. It was now over 5 kilometers long, covered in organic armor that pulsed with the stolen energy of 9 destroyed worlds. President So-min Choi stood in the command center, watching the monster that had once been humanity's hope approach their home. Earth's defense fleet, 200 ships strong, formed a battle line between Terra's Wrath and their planet. All ships, this is Admiral Hyojin Park. Our orders are to protect Earth at all costs. The enemy vessel approaching us was once our own, but it is no longer human. Prepare to engage. On Terra's Wrath, Captain Dalsu felt nothing but hunger as he looked at Earth through the bridge's organic viewing ports. The blue planet looked delicious to him now, full of energy that could feed his ship for decades. Target Earth's sun, he ordered in his echoing voice. We will consume Sol itself and become gods among the stars. But Navigator Nari Kwan stood up from her station, her hand on the emergency controls. No, I won't let you destroy our home. Around the bridge, the crew split into two groups. Half of them, changed by the ship's influence, supported Dalsu's plan to consume Earth's sun. The other half, led by Nari and Chief Engineer Unji Han, fought to maintain their humanity. The plan is madness, Unji shouted over the chaos. If we crack Earth's sun, we'll kill everyone in the solar system. Billions of innocent people will die. They will feed us, Dalsu replied calmly. Their deaths will give us the power to destroy the Devourer fleet completely. It is a fair trade. Nari realized with horror that Dalsu truly believed what he was saying. The ship's hunger had completely taken over his mind. He was no longer the man who had volunteered to save humanity. He had become something that saw people as food. The civil war aboard Terra's Wrath began with Weapons Officer Sang-Hoon Yu refusing to target Earth's sun. I won't do it, Captain. My family lives down there. My children go to school in Seoul. Dalsu looked at him with those cold blue eyes. Then you are no longer useful. He raised his hand and energy from the ship's systems flowed through him, striking Sang-Hoon dead instantly. That was when Nari knew they had no choice. She activated the emergency lockdown, sealing the bridge from the rest of the ship. Then, she began the process of turning Terra's Wrath's weapons against itself. If we can't save the galaxy as humans, she said to Yunji, then we'll save it by destroying the monster we've become. Outside Terra's Wrath, Earth's defense fleet opened fire. Laser cannons and missile launchers filled space with explosions, but their weapons barely scratched the organic armor that covered the PlanetKiller. Admiral Park watched from her flagship as Terra's Wrath shrugged off their attack. All ships concentrate fire on the main weapon systems. Try to disable their planet-cracking ability. But Terra's Wrath was too strong. Its weapons began to glow with the familiar cold light, preparing to fire at Earth's sun. If that beam reached, Seoul the sun would begin to collapse and everyone in the solar system would have minutes to live. Inside the ship, the battle between the human and post-human crew members raged through every corridor. Nari led a desperate group of unchanged humans toward the ship's quantum cores, fighting their way past crew members who had become something alien. The cores are heavily defended, reported Lieutenant Junho, one of the few engineers still fully human. The changed crew members are protecting them like they're sacred. Because they are sacred to the ship, Yunji explained as they ran. The cores are where the absorbed energy from destroyed planets is stored. If we can overload them, the ship will tear itself apart. They reached the core chamber to find it transformed into something that looked like a temple. The quantum cores had grown into massive organic structures that pulsed with the memories of 9 dead worlds. Around them, the changed crew members knelt in worship, their eyes glowing with the same blue light as the cores. Stop them, Dalsu's voice echoed, through the ship's communication system. The unbelievers seek to destroy our ascension. Nari and her team fought their way to the control panels, but they were outnumbered. One by one, her people fell to the ship's defenders. Soon only she and Yunji remained, standing before the massive cores that contained enough destructive energy to crack planets. I can overload the system, Yunji said, her hands working frantically over the controls. But the explosion will destroy everything within 100,000 kilometers. Earth's fleet needs to pull back. Nari activated her communicator. Earth Command. This is Navigator Kwan aboard Terra's Wrath. We're going to destroy the ship from within, but you need to evacuate all vessels from the area immediately. President Choi's voice came back. Nari, there has to be another way. You're our people. We can't just abandon you. You're not abandoning us, Nari replied, watching, Hyunji worked desperately to set up the overload sequence. We're choosing to end this before we become the very evil we set out to fight. Tell Earth that we remembered how to be human at the end. On the bridge, Captain Dalsu felt the ship's distress as Yunji began the overload process. The organic walls around him writhed in pain, and the absorbed voices of 9 dead worlds screamed in his mind. "You fools," he raged. "We could have been gods, we could have consumed galaxies." But even as he spoke, Dalsu felt something stirring deep in his consciousness. A small part of him that was still human, still remembered his wife and daughter, back on Earth. For just a moment his eyes changed from cold blue back to their original brown. "What have I become?" he whispered, looking at his hands that now glowed with stolen planetary energy. The moment of clarity didn't last long, but it was enough. Instead of trying to stop the overload, Dalsu used his connection to the ship to help it along. If Terra's Wrath had to die, he would make sure its death served humanity one last time. Yunji finished her work just as the changed crew members broke through their defenses. "It's done," she told Nari. "The cores will overload in 60 seconds. The explosion will create a quantum cascade that destroys not just our ship, but the approaching Devourer fleet." Nari looked out through the organic walls of the ship and saw Earth in the distance, blue and beautiful and alive. "At least our families will be safe." The overload began and Terra's Wrath started to tear itself apart from the inside. The energy from 9 destroyed worlds, compressed and contained for months, began to escape all at once. The ship's organic system screamed as they were consumed by their own power. But something unexpected happened. As the ship died, the absorbed memories of the destroyed planets began to break free. Instead of just creating an explosion, the overload created something new. A region of space where the quantum echoes of dead civilizations could exist forever. The Devourer fleet, approaching to harvest Earth, was caught in the cascade. But instead of being destroyed, they were transformed. Forced to experience the memories of every world they had ever consumed, every civilization they had silenced. For the first time in millions of years, the Devourers remembered what it felt like to love, to hope, to dream. The great silence that had consumed so much of the galaxy began to break down as the absorbed civilizations found their voices again. On Earth, President Choi watched as the explosion lit up space like a new star. Terra's Wrath was gone, along with its crew of 500 brave souls who had chosen to die as humans rather than live as monsters. But the sacrifice had worked. The Devourer threat was ended, not through destruction but through redemption. The galaxy slowly began to come alive again as the silenced worlds found ways to communicate through the quantum echoes. Years later, Choi, now old and gray, stood before a memorial built for the crew of Terra's Wrath. The inscription, written in both Korean and English, read, "They saved us by choosing to damn themselves, then saved us again by choosing to die." Next to her stood Captain Hyunwoo Kim, now an admiral, who had witnessed the final battle from his ship. "Do you think they knew," he asked, "that their sacrifice would save more than just Earth?" President Choi touched the memorial wall where the names of all 500 crew members were engraved. "I think Navigator Nari knew. At the end, she chose to remember what it meant to be human, and that choice saved the galaxy." Above them, in the night sky, a new constellation glowed faintly. It was the quantum echo region where the voices of destroyed worlds sang together in harmony. Some people said you could hear them on quiet nights, whispering thanks to the humans who had refused to become monsters. Humanity rebuilt the galaxy, but this time they built monuments to restraint instead of power. They remembered Terra's Wrath and the terrible price of victory, and they chose always to remain human no matter what threats they faced among the stars.